"Parking's too expensive, Mom," my son had said, and that's the sentence echoing in my skull when I open my eyes and realize I'm alone. There's a soft beeping near my head, slow and steady, like a metronome reminding me I'm still alive. The ceiling is painfully white, the kind that makes your eyes ache, and the air smells of disinfectant and plastic. For a moment, I don't know where I am. Then the heaviness in my chest, not the surgical pain, but the other kind, tells me before my mind catches up. Denver, heart surgery. My kids were supposed to stay. I turn my head and see 3 empty chairs lined up by the window, their vinyl seats reflecting the dull gray light outside. No purses, no jackets, no half-finished coffee cups, just the faint impressions where bodies once were. My throat tightens. They were here. At some point, they sat right there. So why am I waking up alone? The door opens softly, and Nurse Kelsey steps in, all quiet shoes and practiced kindness. "Good afternoon, Miss Fletcher," she says gently, checking the monitor. "How are we feeling?" I want to say, like my heart's been cut open twice. Instead, I whisper, Where are my kids? Jordan, Megan, Tyler?" Her eyes flick just a fraction to the side. It's tiny, almost nothing, but I catch it. I've spent my whole life reading faces, bracing for moods before they turn sharp. That flicker tells me everything before she speaks. "They were here earlier," she says carefully. "They had to step out." Step out, like a quick errand, like a coffee run. I cling to that thought for a second. Maybe they're in the cafeteria, maybe the chapel, maybe... They said the parking garage was, pretty expensive, she adds, her voice dropping at the end. And they had some things they needed to get to. Each word lands heavy. Expensive, things to get to. I can hear them clearly now. Jordan, always practical, grumbling about parking fees. Megan glancing at her phone, listing errands. Tyler nodding along, eager to get back to whatever waited for him. They voted. They weighed the cost of sitting with their mother after heart surgery against a parking ticket and a busy afternoon. And I lost. My face warms even though my body is cold under the thin hospital blanket. "Oh," I say. My voice sounds far away, like it belongs to someone in the next bed. "Of course, they're busy." The resentment doesn't explode. It rises slowly like a dimmer being turned up. Kelsey's words scrape against old memories. The nights I drove through Ohio snowstorms so Jordan wouldn't miss a game. The extra shifts at the grocery store so Megan could have the right dress for every dance. The rent I paid, month after month, when Tyler just needed a little help. Expensive. Sitting with me had become a luxury. "I'm sure they'll be back later," Kelsey says, but her voice has that padded softness you use when you don't quite believe it yourself. "They said they'd call." They'll call. Of course they will. They're good at calling. Quick texts, small check-ins. "Hey, Mom, can you send a little money?" "Hey, Mom, my truck's in the shop again." "Hey, Mom, I'll pay you back next month, promise." I nod as if it all makes sense. "Thank you," I whisper. Inside, something tightens, not breaks, hardens. I picture the parking garage scene I wasn't there to see. Jordan checking the rates, shaking his head. Megan glancing at the time. Tyler suggesting they could come back later, that Mom won't even remember. That's what cuts deepest, that they counted on my confusion. That they assumed the anesthesia and pain meds would blur this moment. That this absence could be smoothed over later with flowers and an apology. Kelsey adjusts my IV, her touch gentle. "You're doing really well," she says. "The surgery went smoothly. You're strong." Strong, a strange word for someone who couldn't even keep her children in the room. She finishes checking everything, pats the blanket softly, and leaves. The door clicks shut. The silence presses down harder than before. The empty chairs seem to lean toward me, accusing. "You raised them," they say. "You taught them what mattered." Did I teach them that money matters more than people? That convenience outranks love? I stare at the doorway, half hoping someone, anyone, will walk in. I rehearse my response for when my kids return, how I'll smooth it over. "Of course you had to go, sweetheart. Of course parking's expensive." I understand. Even in my head, the words taste bitter. Another click. The door opens again, but it isn't Jordan, or Megan, or Tyler. A man in a dark suit steps inside, unhurried, steady. He's holding a folder and a paper cup of coffee, steam curling up from the lid. For a moment, we just look at each other. His face is older than the one I remember, but there's something familiar in his eyes. "Ms. Fletcher?" he asks softly. "Lucy?" "Yes," I say. My heart gives a small, strange jump. "Do I know you?" He smiles, and it feels like time folds in on itself. "You used to slide my lunch tray forward when the cashier rang me up," he says. "Topeka, Lincoln Elementary. You were 16. I was the kid who never had enough in his account. I'm Caleb Ortiz." The room seems to tilt. Of all the people in the world to walk in when my own children walked out, it's the hungry boy I once helped without thinking twice. As I look into his still, bright, grateful eyes, the resentment in my chest shifts into something new, something sharper, clearer. For the first time, I wonder if the love I've been giving all these years has been going to the wrong people. When Caleb says my paycheck back then was almost nothing, I feel a small sting, even though he means it as praise. It reminds me of how little I had, and how easily I gave it away. My mind drifts back to that cafeteria in Kansas. Metal tables, the smell of canned vegetables, the clatter of trays. I can see him at the end of the line, head lowered, waiting for the cashier to say his account was empty again. I remember stepping forward, sliding my tray, and saying, "Put his on mine." Back then, it felt simple. Do the right thing, even if it costs you. Somewhere along the way, my children learned to treat that part of me as something they could use. Caleb sits beside my bed, his voice low and steady, telling me how those lunches changed his life. He talks about late nights, studying, scholarships, working his way forward, building a career. There's gratitude in every word, and as comforting as that is, it sharpens something painful. My own children never speak about my sacrifices like this. They talk about them as if they were owed. When Caleb says, "You always gave, even when you didn't have much," I think of Jordan rolling his eyes the one time I told him I couldn't help with his business that month. "You always figure it out, Mom," he'd said, as if my effort were a switch he could flip whenever he needed it. Caleb mentions my double shifts in Ohio diners. I can almost feel the ache in my feet again, the grease in my hair as I counted tips near midnight. Also, Megan could have dance lessons and new shoes. She used to drop her bags by the door and ask, "Can we get the nicer ones next time? Everyone else has them." There was no thank you, just a small crease of disappointment, like I'd failed her somehow. Hearing Caleb call those years sacrifice makes resentment swell for all the times my own daughter dismissed them as no big deal. He talks about my years in Colorado grocery stores, stocking shelves before sunrise, covering shifts for people half my age. He says it with admiration. My mind goes instead to Tyler's calls. "Mom, rent's due. They're charging a late fee. Can you help? Just this once?" It was never just once. Every yes meant postponing something I needed. A checkup, a car repair, even the dentist. I remember sitting in my small Denver kitchen, wrapping my sandwich in the same bread bag to avoid buying plastic that week, while Tyler complained that his friends got help from their parents without all the questions. Caleb tells me he knows I live on a modest check and a small pension, and that I still send money out every month. He calls it kindness. My children call it availability. They say things like, "You're better with money than we are," right before asking for a transfer. But the moment I ask about their lives, I'm suddenly intrusive. Looking back now, every one of those exchanges feels off-kilter. When Megan once said, "You wouldn't want me to ruin my credit, would you?" What she really meant was, "Put yourself second again." As Caleb talks, I nod, but inside I'm sorting through years of casual demands and throwaway comments. The jokes about how Mom will help. The texts without greetings, just numbers. The way conversations shifted the moment I mentioned my own exhaustion or bills. I used to smooth it all over, telling myself they were busy, stressed, still figuring things out. Lying here now, listening to a man who once barely knew me speak with more respect than my own children ever have, those excuses begin to fall apart. It finally settles on me that I taught them how to treat me. I was always the answer, always the backup plan, always the one who could stretch herself thinner. They learned that my time, my health, my body were negotiable. In the sighs on the phone, the impatience when I hesitated, the way my help was minimized while more was expected, that's where the resentment lives. Heavy, earned, and for the first time, I don't push it away. I let myself feel it. Caleb reaches for the blue folder resting at the edge of my bed, and something tightens in my stomach before he even opens it. I already know. Nothing good ever lives inside a folder like that. He sets it gently on my blanket, as if it were made of glass, and looks at me. "Lucy," he says softly, "I need you to see what I found, but we'll take it slow." The first page is a printed email thread. My name jumps out in bold. The subject line is simple. Mom. I skim the opening lines and heat rushes to my face. It's from Jordan, to an elder law attorney in Aurora, asking about options for protecting assets when a parent is no longer able to make sound decisions. Each word is polite. Each word cuts. Protecting assets. Parent no longer able. That parent is me. There's a line where he writes, "She's very generous, sometimes to a fault." I can hear his voice as I read it, that smooth, reasonable tone he uses when he wants something. I used to feel proud of how professional he sounded. Now it just sounds cold. Caleb turns the page. Screenshots from a group chat, blue and gray bubbles, my children's names at the top. Megan writes, she keeps giving money to random causes. It's like she wants to die broke. Tyler replies with a laughing emoji. Maybe that's the plan. Guess we'll be the ones eating canned soup when she's gone. I stare at the little icons, the casual punctuation, and feel resentment rise in a slow, heavy wave. Every donation they mock has a face attached to it for me. The food pantry in Tulsa I helped with $85. The neighbor whose electricity I kept on with $300. I saw people. They see numbers. Caleb points to another message. Megan again. If we don't step in, she'll give away the house before we get anything. Before we get anything. Not before she's safe. Not before she's taken care of. Just before we get anything. I always thought that small house was security, for all of us. To them, it's an item on a shelf. Another page, notes from a law firm meeting, questions about joint accounts, about gaining control if confusion becomes an issue. Caleb doesn't editorialize. He lets the words stand. They mentioned you sometimes repeat stories, he says quietly. They use that as an example. I think about the holidays, about telling old family stories the way my mother once did. I thought I was passing on history. They told strangers it was proof I couldn't think clearly. Then a memory hits me so hard I have to close my eyes. I'm 24 again, sitting at my parents' kitchen table. My sister slides papers toward my father after his surgery. "This is just a help, Dad," she says. "You know we love you." He signs without reading. 2 years later, he loses the house. I remember promising myself I would never let that happen to me. The idea that my own children went to lawyers using the same careful language, the same borrowed concern, makes my hands shake beneath the blanket. I paid for everything, and somehow I'm the one they're trying to move out of the way. Caleb takes out a tablet. "This part is hard," he says. "You can stop me anytime." Then I hear it, my children's voices echoing in a parking garage. Jordan. Her place is easily worth $420 now. If she moves to assisted living, we can sell it and finally breathe. Megan. We just have to frame it like it's for her own good. She'll sign anything if you say it's standard. Tyler laughs. Yeah, she trusts you, man. Use that. Use that. They're talking about my trust like it's a tool. I always told myself their jokes were stress, that their comments didn't mean anything. Hearing them speak when they thought I'd never hear them strips every excuse away. They're not confused. They're not overwhelmed. They're planning. My instinct is to defend them, even now, to say they didn't mean it that way. But the words won't come. Instead, something inside me goes very still. I could cry. I could shout. I could tear the pages apart. Instead, I sit with it. I let myself fully understand what their words mean. Not for them, but for me. Then Caleb closes the blue folder and reaches for a burgundy one. "There's something else," he says. "This one is different." Inside, I see my name again, but this time it sits above the words Executive Director. He explains the Lucy Fletcher Promise Foundation, the protected salary, the home in Maple Ridge Commons, the revised will, the power of attorney that safeguards me instead of stripping me away. As he speaks, the resentment sharpens into focus. My children tried to build a future where I disappear and only my money remains. Caleb is offering me a future where I am still here, still deciding, still whole. Looking at those pages, I realize I'm standing on a line I never knew existed. On one side is the woman who keeps apologizing for other people's behavior. On the other is someone I've never been allowed to be, a woman who believes her life belongs to her. For the first time, quietly blocking their plans doesn't feel cruel. It feels fair. The next time my children walk into my hospital room, they arrive in a small wave of noise and practiced warmth. Megan comes in first, clutching a grocery store bouquet, the kind you grab on impulse near the checkout. Her smile is too wide. "Hey, Mom," she says brightly. "Look at you. You're doing so great." The words should comfort me. Instead, they sit wrong. I notice how her eyes flick to the monitor, then to the clock on the wall, like she's already measuring how long she has to stay. Jordan follows, phone still in his hand as if it's attached there. He leans over the bed, pats the blanket instead of my shoulder, and says, "You had us worried for a second, but I knew you'd pull through." He sounds like he's talking about a delayed project, not my heart. Resentment stirs beneath my ribs. He knew I'd pull through, yet he didn't stay to see it. Tyler comes in last, hands in his pockets. "Hey, Mom," he says, giving me a quick half hug that bumped my IV. "Sorry we had to run earlier. Things got kind of crazy." Crazy. That's his word for leaving me alone after surgery because parking was expensive. I keep my face soft, but I store every word. They arrange themselves around the bed and the performance begins. Megan perches on the edge of a chair. "We've been talking," she says gently, "and we really don't think you should be alone at home anymore." "We've been talking, not with me, about me." I nod and let her continue. Jordan jumps in. "Yeah, we found this really nice place, assisted living, super clean, great staff, activities. They handle everything so you don't have to worry about bills and stuff." His voice is smooth, almost rehearsed. I hear the echo of the parking garage recording in my head, selling the house, finally being able to breathe. He says they handle everything, but what he really means is we will. Tyler adds, "It would just give everyone peace of mind, you know? We could make sure everything's covered." He says we, but he means them, their peace, their control. Each word about safety sharpens the resentment, especially knowing how unsafe they made me feel when they walked out. Then Megan reaches into her bag and pulls out a folder, setting it on the rolling table as if she's sharing travel brochures. "We already printed some forms," she says lightly. "Standard stuff, information releases, some financial things so we can help manage payments. Nothing big." Nothing big. Every major loss in my life has started with someone saying exactly that. Before I answer, there's a knock. Caleb steps in, this time in a white coat. My children straighten instantly, like students caught whispering. "Good afternoon, Miss Fletcher," he says calmly, then nods to them. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Megan is on her feet. "Not at all," she chirps. "We were just talking about Mom's care, making sure she has the support she needs." Support. I think of the emails, the chats, the plans hidden in that blue folder. Support that removes me. Support that frees up the house. Caleb steps closer, his calm filling the room. "Family involvement can be important," he says. "May I ask, how much independence does your mother have at home right now?" Jordan answers too fast. "She's been getting a little mixed up," he says. "Bills, dates, nothing serious, but we want to stay ahead of it." My jaw tightens. He turns kindness into confusion, unaware this stranger has already seen every number, every note. Caleb looks at me. "Is that how you feel, Lucy?" he asks. "Do you feel mixed up?" For the first time, my children hesitate. They weren't expecting the question to come to me. I meet Caleb's eyes, steady. "I have moments," I say calmly, "like anyone my age, but I pay my bills. I live alone. I cook, clean, and drive when I need to. Inside, I add, I may have been blind to your plans, but I'm not helpless. Over the next weeks, everything they plan for me quietly unravels. With Caleb's help, I accept the executive director position at the foundation. When I see the salary in writing, my hands shake, not from fear, but from the shock of being valued in a way my own family never showed. I open a new bank account in my name alone. They know nothing about it. I move into Maple Ridge Commons, a place I choose, not something picked from a website. Trees, walking paths, neighbors who introduce themselves without asking what I can offer. When I sign the lease, Caleb's legal team is present, not my children. In a downtown Denver office, Ms. Delgado slides the new will and power of attorney across the table. My children are no longer heirs, no longer decision makers. When my house is sold, it will fund scholarships and meal programs, not their expectations. As I sign, I think of Megan's printed forms and Jordan's smooth talk about standard stuff. My pen doesn't hesitate. I'm not raising my voice. I'm not creating drama. I am quietly ending their plan. They'll tell themselves later that it was all for my health. They'll say, Mom finally listened. They'll never know that every signature that day belonged to me, and me alone. 6 months later, my mornings begin with sunlight and birds instead of monitors and alarms. I wake up in my small cottage at Maple Ridge Commons, and for a moment I forget I ever lay in that Denver hospital bed, wondering if anyone would come back for me. The air smells like coffee and grass. I pad into the kitchen, pour myself a cup, and look out at the little lake beyond my porch. It still surprises me that this is my life now. My days are full, but in a way that nourishes me instead of draining me. By 8:30, I'm at the small office the foundation rents a few miles away. A bulletin board near the door is covered in thank you notes from schools and senior centers. I sit down and open a folder on my computer, grant proposals for school meal programs. As I read, I think of kids like Caleb once was, standing in line with empty trays. Approving a $9,500 microgrant for a senior center in Oklahoma City makes every exhausted shift I ever worked feel like it finally led somewhere meaningful. Then my phone buzzes, and a little of that warmth slips away. The caller ID shows a familiar name, Jordan. I let it ring once more before answering. Hi, honey, I say, keeping my voice light. He doesn't ask how I'm doing. He goes straight to it. Mom, we've been talking, he says. That phrase again, we've been talking. We're worried about this job. It's a lot for someone your age. Are you sure you're not being taken advantage of? Every word is wrapped as concern, but I hear what's underneath. He isn't worried about my energy. He's worried about my independence. I think of the old emails, the way my generosity was framed as confusion. Resentment flares, but I keep my tone steady. I'm doing well, I tell him. The work matters to me. I chose it. He sighs. We just don't want anyone messing with your head. Maybe you should let us talk to this Ortiz guy. Let us, as if they're guardians and I'm a child. Inside, I bristle. Out loud, I say, there's no need. My legal team is protecting my interests. The silence that follows tells me he doesn't like that answer. Not long after, Megan texts. The message is long, filled with concern-shaped barbs. Mom, I heard you're giving away a lot of money through that foundation. I'm glad you feel useful, but it worries me. What if they convince you to sign things you don't understand? I stare at the screen, remembering how she once slid papers in front of me and called them nothing big. The irony settles heavy in my chest. The only people who ever tried to mislead me weren't in this office. They grew up in my house. Tyler's attempt comes through an attorney. Caleb forwards me a note from a law firm asking general questions about my mental state and work responsibilities. The language is polished, but the intent is obvious. They're still searching for a way to claim I'm not thinking clearly. When Caleb tells me, he looks almost apologetic. They tried again, he says. They were told you're competent, employed, and protected. There's no concern here. Each update tightens something in me. Not because they're worried, but because of how they show it. None of them have come here to sit on my porch, to see my days, to ask what makes me happy now. They talk to strangers about my mind instead of talking to me about my heart. Life here goes on anyway. Neighbors wave as I walk the path around the lake. Mrs. Hargrove brings over fresh bread and asks about the students we helped that week. Mr. Bennett tells me about the garden club and insists I plant tomatoes next season. When they call me Ms. Lucy from the foundation, there's pride in their voices. They see me as someone who contributes, not someone who needs managing. Some evenings, a quiet sadness does settle in. Not for the children I have now, with their plans, forms, and careful language, but for the children I once imagined. The ones who would argue over board games on my couch, bring their families for Sunday dinner, and say, "Thank you, Mom," without calculation. I let myself grieve that version for a while. Then I remind myself it was a dream, not the truth. One afternoon, after another round of unanswered calls, I finally write the letter I've been carrying in my head. It's short. I tell them I'm safe, happy, and stable. I say my estate plans are complete and won't be changed. I make it clear I won't be sending money anymore. At the end, I leave a door open. If they ever want to help others, they're welcome to volunteer with the foundation. I sign it Love, Mom, seal the envelopes, and feel something release in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, but the calm of a line drawn with a steady hand. That evening, I sit on my porch with a blanket over my legs, watching the sky turn gold over the water. My phone is inside, on silent. The house is quiet, except for the sounds of the community around me. For the first time in a long while, I know my life belongs to me. And for anyone listening who gives and gives, hoping it will finally be enough for someone to stay, hear this. You don't have to wait for a hospital room to choose yourself. And if you know someone like me, don't just feel sorry for them. Share this story with them before they start believing that the only way to be loved is to be used.